All right, welcome back to another episode of our podcast. My name is David Levine, founder and CEO of ResTech Solutions. Today, we're talking about building a legal brand online, influencer deals, social media risk, and protecting your practice. So I'd like to welcome our guest, Abe. And Abe, if you'd like to take a moment and introduce yourself.
Yeah, good to be here, David. My name's Abe Lichy. I'm the owner of the Advisory Legal here in New York City, and I've been doing the solo thing, small firm thing for about 8, 9 years now, coming from Big Law and loving every minute of it, or most minutes of it, and carved out a little niche in the social media influencer entertainment space, which has been really rewarding.
So you work closely with creators and brands navigating influencer deals and online visibility. From a legal perspective, what do most professionals underestimate when they start building a brand online?
I think they underestimate the the preliminary steps that you need to take, like basic things like filing trademark, doing trademark searches. If you're building a brand name and you don't even bother to see if somebody else has the same name or something similar in a similar category. Seen a lot of founders have to pivot their brand name, and some brands are built around the name too. So it's important that you do basic legal checks like that. Consider what kind of corporate entity you want to set up. Make sure you've got IP agreements if you have any freelancers creating artwork or graphic design or web development work. The last thing you want is, this thing gets huge that you're building, and then a few years down the line, 5, 6 years down the line, you're going to sell your business. And then you realize you've got all the exposure because people are not coming out of the woodworks to make claims on stuff that they created for you years ago.
All right, I appreciate that insight. And so, more about your business. So, what types of legal issues are you seeing more frequently as professionals lean harder into social media and digital branding?
A lot of the legal issues I see center around usage rights. So in these contracts, you've got your standard contractual provisions that you'll see in most services contracts. But what's a little bit unique about influencer creator type of deals is the usage rights section. And with that, there's a lot of confusion in there as far as what means what. So for example, is it just organic usage where the brand can repost the content that you've created and published organically on their feed, reposting it to Instagram stories? Or is there paid usage rights where the brand can actually boost their post, put money behind amplifying the post itself? Then there's whitelisting, which is when the brand will essentially sync with your own account and put paid advertising dollars to boost your own content that looks like it's from your account, or dark posting where you'll create a piece of content. It's not published per se, but the brand can use that on their account with paid money behind it. And so it's the length of time that can be used. It's making sure that the parameters of what mediums they could be used on. Is it just on social media? Can it be used on their website, in their newsletters, in their mailers, on billboards or cutouts in stores? So it's really important that you're looking at what the deal terms called for and just make sure that they're reflected in there, because each use type has a monetary value. And so if you're not getting paid as a creator for this broad usage rights, then obviously you're leaving money on the table and devaluing yourself.
All right, well, perfect. And when you look at creators or firms scaling their brand, where do you see the biggest operational or legal breakdowns that happen behind the scenes, if any?
If a creator has manager or an agent, if those terms are not spelled out clearly, then I've seen that cause a lot of friction, especially as creators may want to part ways with the manager, or if if there's a misalignment as far as what the manager should be entitled to. I'll give you an example. You've got creators who do endorsement deals for other brands, right? So the manager and the agents and/or will take a commission on those brand deals. But as creators build their own brands, especially brands that live outside of their own personal name that they use for their brand endorsement deals, is that something that they then have to commission to their manager or agent if the manager or agent is doing nothing on that, for example? So that's one thing. And then I think a lot of creators fail to plan their expansion in a thoughtful manner. A lot of creators who do endorsement deals end up pivoting to create their own brands. And I don't think they realize how much work goes into that. A lot of them think, I'll just stick my name on something, it's going to be successful. And if you're big enough and if you can get the right team behind you who just does everything for you, great. It's not the case most of the time. There is a lot of work And creators need to start thinking of themselves as entrepreneurs first and foremost, because it is a business. And if you're just thinking of yourself as a creative, then you're going to run into a lot of issues down the road.
Okay. And kind of one question comes to mind for maybe someone who isn't as familiar with the space. Are you able to maybe give like a quick high level insight as to, what is a creator versus the influencer and how it's, if someone is interested in this, if they wanted to get into the space, what would those initial steps look like?
It's a good question. I think I have my perspective on the difference. I don't know if there's an agreed upon, like a widely agreed upon distinction, but I view creators as people who are creating their own content. This is going to sound circular, but in a creative way, something that is not about influencing for other brands per se, where they're putting out comedy skits, or artwork or pottery videos or educational type of content. That to me is really a creator, whereas an influencer could be somebody who just, they've built a following because they're really into fashion or some product type. And they're more skewed towards doing endorsement deals for other brands and other products. Now there's an overlap. It's not really a bright line distinction. But I mean, as far as getting into it, I always start with the why. Why do you want to be a creator? Why do you want to be an influencer? Is it just because you want to feel cool and have a big social media following? I mean, no judgment, but that might not be the best reason, because it's a little self-serving in my opinion and not entrepreneurially driven. But really the successful ones are those that are authentic to themselves and have a point of view that they want to share. It could be anything. To be honest, I find the weirder the better, because a lot of generic stuff is out there. It's so saturated. People have generic fashion, gadgets, whatever, but it's the ones who have a really unique and sometimes contrarian point of view and aren't afraid to speak their mind on it, that attract a loyal following of people who that resonates with. So when you're getting started, create content, see what works, see what doesn't, keep it consistent and find your audience. And you'll start to feel that groove when you hit on something that's connecting with people in an authentic way. You'll get that feedback. You'll see people sharing your content with the shares on Instagram or reposting or commenting on your post. And it's a vibe. You'll know, but you're not going to know unless you actually try it. Not everything's going to work right away. You just have to accept the fact that some of your content is going to fail, and that's fine.
So just a quick recap, then it almost sounds like the influencer probably started out as a creator, but as they built that following and gained that popularity, then would you say that's kind of a natural evolution? If someone's really looking at, okay, I really want to do this, but I got to obviously develop myself, my brand, and get the following. So it sounds like they would start as the creator, and then as that grows, I guess would naturally potentially become the influencer, so to speak.
That is a path. So I wouldn't disagree with you on that, but I don't think it's a prerequisite that you start out as a quote creator. To be honest, I don't even like these labels. I think people just putting out content, it doesn't matter what you're called. If you're doing something that feels authentic to yourself and that's resonating with the audience, and if you can monetize off of it in a way that feels natural, it doesn't matter if you're a creator or an influencer. A lot of people get bogged down in these terms, and I think it's a disservice.
Okay. No, that's a great insight. Appreciate that. And as more of this work is happening digitally, so we've talked about the contracts, negotiations, content, payments, what are the areas where you think firms are most exposed without realizing it, or really maybe more those people creating the content?
When you say firms, again, you're talking about law from a law firm perspective or from brands?
I guess I should say it's probably in this case, since we're talking more of the brands, I would say the brands, but looking at it, I guess from I guess that lens, the legal lens, let's say.
Sorry, can you repeat the question then one more time?
Sure. Yeah. So as more of this work happens digitally, the contracts, negotiations, content, payments, what are the areas where you think brands are most exposed without realizing it?
Because so much content is being made now, the lines are getting more and more blurred as far as what's protectable, what's considered fair use for somebody's IP. There's your standard copyright protections and trademark protections, but a lot of stuff that brands are creating is being generated with AI. I mean, literal photo shoots and like what appears to be real human beings are being generated with artificial intelligence. And so, from a legal perspective, whether or not that's protectable is questionable. I also think that there's going to be a backlash against the AI movement, where, especially in consumer brands, consumer products, where people want consumer products. I think because of the human element of it, there's a physical product that you're buying for whatever purpose you're buying it for. Brands who are not disclosing the use of artificial intelligence, while it may not be as heavily regulated now, I would wager in the next 1 to 2 years, the FTC is going to come up with updated guidelines and requirements that are going to require such disclosures. Because if you're looking at, these perfect specimens of humans that are fake, but you don't know if they're fake, it's kind of like false advertising if you're not disclosing it. And so I think you're going to start seeing more and more regulation around the use of AI or the disclosure of it. And brands who overly rely on artificial intelligence without thinking about how that might impact their consumer base, I think that's a big risk.
All right. Well, appreciate that. So I want to shift gears a little bit, so I know we've talked a bit more about the business side. Personally, what do you enjoy most about the work you're doing right now at the advisory?
The people, I love my clients. I've been very blessed to have clients now. Some of them have been with for 8 years, and their teams have grown. And I talk to them on a daily basis, some of them. And I just love giving advice. I mean, that's why I call it the advisor. I advise people. So you draft the contracts, the paperwork, the not sexy stuff. You still have to do it. Uh, Nothing is like having somebody who actually needs your advice. You give it to them because you actually know what you're talking about, and you see them implement that and grow their business. And it's just this beautiful cycle that over time, it's really rewarding.
All right, great. And probably one of my favorite questions to ask on these episodes, are there any initiatives, shifts, or areas of growth that you're focused on right now, either in your practice or how you serve your clients?
I mean, I'm very into the AI stuff, the good and the bad. I think there's a lot of caution around artificial intelligence and the use of it, especially with a law firm. At the same time, I think if you can master how to use AI as a tool, as a lawyer, especially, it could be extremely valuable. The problem is that you can't rely on it that well because you still have to verify everything. Otherwise, you get yourself in trouble at some point with information that's not correct or that the AI hallucinated. But I think the opportunity is there. I think if you can be smart about it, it could make things a lot more efficient, enables you to better serve your clients, of course, and to honestly think more creatively because you could bounce ideas and think about things in a different way and go down little rabbit holes.
Yep, no, that's some great insight. Would agree with that too, because especially the creative and the different insights, I've seen that a lot lately, even as I'm working right now on a AI on a pretty significant project, and it has given me some vantage points I've never would have probably thought of on my own. So I think that's some great insight right there.
Yeah. I will highlight this though. Whoever does use AI for work stuff, it's very easy to forget to be a critical thinker. And that's the danger. If you're going to use AI, especially lawyers, you have to maintain extra vigilance with the critical thinking because you start relying on the outputs, which are not always accurate. You just become kind of this automaton yourself. And it's a very dangerous path, especially for lawyers.
Yeah, and one thing I always say, and I think that this may resonate well too, is always think of what you get from AI as a first draft. So it's never finalized.
Yeah, I like
You
that.
still need to review it. Because I will even say, I was doing some research for some other presentations I was doing for a group of lawyers in the last year. And probably one of the biggest issues, and you actually alluded to this, is it would hallucinate and make things up every time. Okay, I look for a specific example, cite me a source. More often than not, it would cite something that didn't exist or point to a web page that didn't exist. And we'd probably have to ask it like 3 or 4 times just to get something that was legitimate.
Yep. I've run into that too. This is a great example.
Okay, perfect. And so, as your firm and your clients rely more on digital platforms, contracts, and online visibility, how do you currently think about cybersecurity or data protection, if at all, for all of these items?
I rely primarily on my client management systems that are very, very secure. They're made for lawyers. So I make it a point to make sure I'm using the best quality CRMs, file management platforms. It's harder for solos, we don't have our own IT teams, right? So you have to use platforms that are reliable in that sense and compliant with the legal requirements. So far so good. Knock on wood.
That's great. So it's great to hear you got a platform that really takes that security seriously. And I'll kind of take this one step further, and this could be food for thought, and even for anyone else who's watching that might be in a similar position. You still have other, systems and tools you probably use in the digital arena that sit outside those platforms, such as, probably the biggest example would be your email. And so I know those are areas that also can be very high probability of entry points into any organization. So I would even kind of pose a similar question around those tools that you use that are fall maybe outside something handled by a third party currently. Um, you know, and more my curiosity, since it's kind of what I do, and I'm always interested to hear and see what people are doing. So as you're relying on these digital platforms, so you mentioned you have the third party management system, but then what about your other systems that you use that potentially right now aren't managed, such as your email is probably the biggest one, and even data you may have outside of that? How is all that being managed and protected, or what do you currently do for those items?
Any sensitive information or confidential information is transmitted through my platforms. So, I make it a point to not keep stuff that is sensitive on stuff that could be hacked, for example. Um, that's my answer to that.
Okay, no, appreciate that. Well, I know as we are getting close to wrapping up here, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Just go out and do stuff. Try it. See what you like. Life's too short to just be an automaton. That's all
Well,
I got.
appreciate that. Well, Abe, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. And for anyone who'd like to know more, we'll have all of the information where you can reach out to Abe and the advisory in the description below this video.
Cool. Thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you.